Hey, thank you for listening to the Geek 2.0 podcast. On this episode, we're going to dive deep into the mysteries of Star Wars and a cultural phenomenon that it is. All right, and welcome to another episode. This is number 11. I made sure of that because last time I had trouble with numbers. So this is number 11. And we're going to be talking a couple things. Our rant, the what grinds my gears type segment in the front part is we're going to be talking about tech in the classroom, the good and the bad. And on our main topic is going to be the phenomenon of Star Wars.
Yes.
And all its goodness. And there's the bad part of it too.
No such thing.
the dark side.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and jump into the grind my gears or the rant. We still haven't come up with a name with it.
Yeah, we'll think of something.
Yeah. Well, sometime next year. So, with talking about tech in school, we all grew up, in the dark ages of even before Texas Instrument calculators and our thing was the the wacky wall crawler stuff, providing hours
against the wall.
Yeah, hours of entertainment. Nowadays, kids these days, wow, I feel old, have everything from cell phones, iPads, Chromebooks, pretty much the full gamut of technology in the classroom, which is a good thing.
It is. There's a lot of really neat things you can do with all of that.
A lot of collaboration, especially like projects between kids that you can not have to stay at school. You can actually take it home and be able to work on your project or science fair or whatnot.
Or work on projects with kids from other schools that are working on the same projects.
Yeah, worldwide, everything. The good part about it is, like I said, with the collaboration. The bad part is that it can also lead to distractions. iPads can be... I mean, look at the kids. They don't really take care of their stuff.
Yeah. What?
I see some pictures of like a Chromebook that is only 2 months old and it looks like it's gone through a war and it's been exploded and landed on grenades. And that's only 2 months old.
Well, I guess there's something to be said about it though, because, and I honestly have no grounds to speak on this, I'm just assuming, but if they start with that stuff early, would they not learn how to handle their property better earlier?
You would hope, but I think it's a whole mindset. It's like, oh, it's not mine.
Well, that's
I can get. I'll bust it up and I'll get a new one.
There is something to be said for that. That's true.
Now, when we were going to school, it was at the beginning of all the Mac computers were coming in. It was like the Apple II or whatever it was. You play Oregon Trail, the first SimCity. And then that was on the little 5.5 inch, or no, 3.25 inch floppy disk.
The good times, King's Quest.
So it was like going from that within, let's say, 10 years, you jump up to portable tech or portable computers, say the iPads in the classroom. Now every kid is going to have one, but a lot of school systems can't afford it. They can't afford, the teachers can't afford books and stuff.
Yeah. That really could be a whole nother subject in itself, because I think a lot of that should come more from the school itself or the state or the county rather than the teachers paying for it. That blew my mind when I first found out about that.
Yeah, it's like, why are you having any teachers, buying school supplies for the kids when that's like you think it's a given? Yeah,
even for the classroom, a lot of the decorations and banners and stuff, that's the teachers. Like, that's nuts to me. Anyways, so
tangents.
The thought of the tech part of it, yes, it is awesome, but like you were saying, that's not easy. That can get crazy expensive.
Oh yeah. So looking at iPads, Apple probably gives them a small 20% discount.
It's Apple. Yeah. Even with the discount, it's still ridiculous.
Your starting price is at close to $900 for, let's say, like an iPad Pro,
and that'd be a really good price.
Yeah. But you got. There was one case in the LA County school was getting. The teachers and the parents are complaining because why are they having to do this when their schools are so much like disarray.
Mm-hmm.
While we're getting the latest and greatest iPads, woohoo! Well, that's all good and all, but hey, how about you fix the door on the school?
Yeah, just standard structural maintenance.
Or give like backpacks to the kids. Now, on the good thing, we'll go back and forth probably for the next couple of minutes. Is like I said, with collaboration, but it's also you got the chalkless boards. I forget exactly what they are. Smart boards. So you don't, unlike the days past where you get the chalk dust and you're clapping out
the erasers. Yeah, I've done that a time or two.
Now everything is all on the smart board. You got this huge whiteboard, and you can go up there with the special pen, and it's a big tablet, so to speak. It's got the projector, and the computer knows where you're doing, what you're doing, and everything, and puts it into the computer. And you can do like interactive games, like the 2+2, and you write 4, says good job, and sparkles and stars come out and explode from it.
That's awesome.
So it's one of those things. It's great because it gives like the positive reinforcement, and you don't have to worry about cancer-causing chalk.
What?
Yeah, no relation, but I don't think that's even proven.
No.
It's just a rite of passage that our kids are no longer going to be having.
That's all right, though. I mean, if they don't have to deal with that shriek sound from the chalk on the board.
Oh, where you get the nice new one. It's like,
oh, yeah.
Or you get the kid in class, I think he's a jokester and does it with his fingernails.
But it is a neat idea, though, if they had, because, I mean, if you think about it back in our day when you were talking about the backpacks and, lockers and all that stuff, I mean, you could theoretically get rid of all that and just carry an iPad.
Yeah.
Because
instead of 50 pounds of weight on the back.
It's everything you need all the time.
Yeah.
And you could even, if you had the system set up right, again, big, if, you don't even have to go up to the board to do any of that stuff.
No, you'd be sitting at your desk.
Correct. And you'd write on the board your answer, and it would show up on the board in front of everyone kind of thing, which also could lead to some fun.
Well, yeah. But you also don't have that embarrassment if you're like sitting at the board and you're like, you're 4 or 5 years old and trying to figure out what 2+2 and you can't remember, and you're like sweating, and you have everyone staring at you, and you're getting that whole.
Well, the problem is you got to make sure to do the right formula for it.
Oh yeah, the Common Core. That's another thing. Why? What is this stupid Common Core?
That's something that we could get into. I actually somewhat understand it. What? I do. I know. Believe it or not.
You'll be the first one. When your daughter gets to the age to go to school, you'll be. No, they'll change it.
Yeah, they will by then.
By a couple years from now.
Yep.
It's a new Common Core.
I've seen real examples. There's a lot on the internet that are not real Common Core examples.
It's confusing. It's like what? Just 2+2. 2+2 is 4. I don't need to show my work.
It's just a different way of looking at it. That's all. It drives people up a wall because they're used to one thing. That's all.
I'm very stubborn. I like my simple math.
Your multiplication tables.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
What's that nonsense? But anyways, now, when we were in school, your major distraction was, cell phones weren't really a big thing at the time.
No, those didn't come out till...
It was pagers.
Yeah, pagers. Yes. Pagers would have been, middle school, freshman year, high school time frame?
Well, in high school, there was the Nokia, everyone playing Snake.
Was that... I know that was high school, but was that early high school or later high school?
I can't remember when it exactly came out.
But there was that, but I mean, even before that, you started getting into the Texas Instruments. Those you were able, when those started playing games, those were insane.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, go back even further, like there was the calculator watches that you could get.
Oh yeah, the geeky nerdy ones with the calculator on it. You had one.
Yes, I did. That got me through
very proud
quite a few tests.
There's no calculators allowed. Yeah, I'll show you.
Yeah. Just checking the time.
2+2.
Yeah. I love that watch.
You can still get it.
Yeah, I know you can. You don't need it, but you can.
Yeah. No, it's the distractions where, like you said, the calculators and stuff that's coming. It wasn't so like And passing notes was, an art form in and of
Oh my god,
itself.
the way the girls would fold those notes.
It's like a little tiny little like ninja stars.
Origami.
And it's just like constant. It's like, whew,
Yep.
and they're very stealthy.
Or you remember the football game? You used to fold it to the triangle. Yeah. So, I mean, the kids will always find a way to distract themselves. Just now they're using tech.
Yeah, now it's cell phones.
Yeah.
And lately, with introduction of PUBG and Fortnite into the mobile space, you've heard of the games.
I've heard of the games. I did not know that they were in the mobile space now.
Yeah, it's just recent, like within this past week or so.
Jeez.
So already schools are having to block the game servers through their Wi-Fi because kids are just bogging down the Wi-Fi. It's slow as it is. And then you have how many students trying to play the game all at the same time.
Well, see, that in itself kind of surprises me because why weren't those blocked in the first place? Like, to me, there's two different schools of thoughts when it comes to networking and firewalls and all that stuff to really kind of get into it. And there's the least restrictive and most restrictive. And you basically just block the things that you need, or you block everything and only allow the things that you need. When it comes to schools, I would think you'd go with the most restrictive and only open the things you really need.
Yeah, you would think, but the state of schools now, you have maybe someone that they volunteered or hired from off-site doing the security that doesn't know exactly what they're doing. They just opened up the package of a Netgear router, stuck it in with the modem, and hey, everything's good.
Oh, God.
Excuse me.
I mean, that...
And it's not even secure because
that's why you
still
have consulting firms. You bring them in, you're paying them money, but you do it once and it should be good.
We're talking about this education system.
I know. Is that something the principal has to pay for?
Probably. Yeah, he went down to Best Buy. I think this would work out for you.
I've got one of these at home.
But it's bogging down the Wi-Fi, and it's just causing even more distraction because you have, let's say, 4 or 5 kids in a small class all huddled around as they're trying to get their chicken dinners or their battle royale, whatever. And the teachers are, they banned cell phones when it first came out, when texting and all that. And then they gave up, it seemed like, within the past 5 years. Like, you know what? It's just a losing battle. Let's just not worry about it.
You got to kind of give in with the times.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it.
When you're Googling your answers to your test.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of writing it on your arm, you just pull out your phone and you're like, okay, gee, what's...
Yeah. It's definitely... Because I was going to say, I mean, you kind of have to get with the times. Like, they're going to have them, but that's where it would come down to the student ultimately and the teacher. And the teacher's going to try to do their best to get the classroom to listen and pay attention, but they can only do so much. And
they got less than an hour in each period.
Yeah, and on top of that, there's the whole twist in culture with the way we handle things, where it used to be if the teacher called the parents because something went wrong, it was the student that was in trouble. It was the child. Now, if the teacher calls the parent, it's the teacher that's getting yelled at for this stuff.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, so it's...
My little snowflake is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Not gonna happen. So, I mean, there's something to be said for that too. I mean, you kind of have to rethink the way we handle things. It seems like one of the biggest issues that is occurring is this shift in mindset that we've had with generations that have come up. It seems every generation wants to do different than the generation that raised them. Right. Which I get, and it does lead to a lot of really great things, but there's something to be said with the way that some things were handled. You know what I mean? Like, you don't necessarily have to change everything.
Yeah, you're not throwing baby out with the bathwater. You're having to do a couple things because like growing up, it's like, oh, when I have kids, I'm not going to do that because way you told me to do stuff sucked. And
Yeah, I didn't like
do
that. You know,
Yeah.
all right. Well,
I will let my kids stay up till midnight, eat Cheerios and whatever, and candy, and watch horror movies where they're 2.
yeah.
That's not gonna work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did the same thing when I was younger. I was always like, you know, I'm going to do this different or I'm going to do this different. And now that I'm on the other side of that coin, I'm like, okay, I kind of get where they were coming from now. You know, could they have done it differently? Of course. Every parent will tell you, in hindsight, they could have done something differently. No one's saying that they did everything right, but it doesn't necessarily mean they were 100% wrong with everything either. And as much as you didn't like it as a kid,
There was a basis for
there's
what
a
they
reason.
did,
Yeah.
or what we do now.
Exactly. But it seems like that's not necessarily the way things have gone. Kids have gotten, our generation included, have gotten to a point where they're almost blinded by hatred, I guess would be a way of putting it.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing now, especially in the U.S. I'm not sure how other places are.
Fighting a sneeze.
I was wondering what you're doing. You're making faces over there.
Sorry, I'll get through
It's
this.
so bad. But yeah, here I'm coughing.
We are a mess.
Wow. But yeah, it's a cultural thing.
Mm-hmm.
Each generation will have new things, especially with technology. It opens up the world to pretty much everyone.
Well, and that's kind of what, you know, at least what I was trying to get at is we have to accept it and we have to embrace it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we have to learn how to work with it properly.
Yeah, because within, let's say 50 years from now, everyone has implants. What are you going to do? You're going to rip out the kid's implant, put it in a bucket, and say you can pick it up at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta be able to hold responsibility for the individual's actions, and you also have to teach on the parent side or on the teacher side, depending on the situation. You're gonna have to teach the responsibility and the mindset, at least that I know that I had when I was younger, and I know generations before me definitely had it, of respecting your elders. You know what I mean? What you may not like it, but in certain situations, like in a classroom, tough. You are there to respect and listen to what they have to tell you.
Exactly.
That I feel like that's missing a lot.
Is. Yeah, you see all the kids out there. It's just they have no respect.
No respect. Good old Rodney Dangerfield.
No respect. But I think what we can say is that technology isn't bad. You just have to learn how to work around it, work with it, and integrate it with how it affects your daily life and how it affects your kids' life and how they have to deal with it affecting their life as well within school and home and elsewhere.
I feel like it really comes down to the parents teaching the children the respect that they need to show, not only with the adults, but with the devices that they are handling and working with, and that this is what this is for, is not for this. It's kind of similar to teaching them the difference between fantasy and reality. What they see on TV is fantasy, it's fiction, it's made up.
Yeah.
Compared to, you do not do what you see on TV in real life. Like, it's kind of the same. Those have to come from the parents. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that has to be instilled.
Yeah, teaching right from wrong and basic
manners.
Human decency. So let's go ahead and jump into the main story. Now, the main story is Star Wars.
Yes.
Now, when you have Gandalf coming over across and teaching Harry Potter how to use... Wow.
Just had a lot of people go, wait, what?
What are you doing? Star Wars is a huge phenomenon that started back in the 70s. Well, a little-known director called George Lucas, at the time, he was not really well-known. He did American Graffiti before, and his student film, THX.
Sure.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't pay that much attention. I think most people will agree. Everyone kind of has a love-hate relationship with Lucas.
Yeah, especially with the prequels. But we'll get into that a little bit. But with Star Wars, it was this huge thing that's exploded pretty much almost overnight back in, what was it, 1977 when A New Hope opened up in theaters. And at the time, we didn't have the internet. All we had was just newspapers and movie critics. And it was this little sci-fi film that, space opera. We had like Buck Rogers and I'm blanking on the name. Is the Robinsons and Lost in Space.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Yeah, that TV show. Sci-fi wasn't really like big, and of course it was also cheesy.
Oh,
you got the little rocket ship on a fishing line with a firecracker in its back.
So great.
And people, robots with people covered in tinfoil. But this was like the first time I want to say, I could be wrong, this a feature-length film with the level of special effects for the day was way out there, was way advanced than what anyone has done.
Well, the special, if I remember correctly, because I've seen a couple of documentaries on this, from what I remember, there was nothing out in Hollywood to that level, and the whole thing about it was that Lucas started his own special effects company specifically because of this movie, and to be able to build everything that went with it and all the special effects, and that's what made.
Yeah, and the character there's no CGI. There's no computer. I mean, the only movie that was Tron. I think that was in the mid '80s.
Yeah, that was '80s.
They used any kind of like CGI, but this was the first one using models and how using filming.
Wasn't
techniques.
the first one. There were some before it that were using like claymation and stuff like that. A lot of the old school horror movies had a lot of claymation and
Jason and the Argonauts and her old Hercules movies with the claymation skeletons and that whole scene.
My wife's gonna kill me because she's a fan of his, but I can't think of his name. The guy that's kind of like the founding father of a lot of that stuff.
Claymation. I know it's right there.
But I mean, so there was stuff out there for it. It just there wasn't to the level that Lucas was looking for this sci-fi feature. But there's a lot of really interesting aspects that are behind this movie that I don't think a lot of people kind of realize unless you are a fan, and you look into it and actually watch a lot of documentaries that are out there. But like, there was Lucas, there was Spielberg, there was Scorsese, there was a few other big name directors.
Because Spielberg, it was before Indiana Jones, because all that was in the 80s, and I'm blanking on if he did anything prior to that. I'm sure he did.
Yeah, but like all of them were kind of like the rat pack, if you will, of directors. Like they all kind of hung out and were invited to each other's sets and gave input, and
because eventually they did work together on like was it Close Encounters?
I don't remember.
I knew they.
I think E.T.
Yeah, I think E.T. They were a collaboration of George Lucas and Spielberg.
Yes,
collaborated on that movie.
But there was a lot of input on the very first Star Wars. There was, believe it or not, a lot of input from like Scorsese and and Spielberg and all. I think there was like two others. I just can't think of their names right now. That had a lot of input because he would run past them like, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking," or "Hey, here's the scene that we shot. What do you think?" And they would go back and be like, this or that, and like they would critique each other and as he was filming and would do that. So it's interesting to think of because you think of it as this was all in his head and he did it when really, yes, it was, but there was a lot of input from a lot of other what we now consider really great directors that then were kids. They were all
even back then. The studio was like, you know what? Yeah, we'll give you the money to do your little sci-fi film fan project, whatever it is.
They agreed to it because it was a condition with him doing something else.
I think it's because he did American Graffiti for the studio, allowed him to be able to do Star Wars.
It was something like that.
It was something, I can't really remember off the top of my head.
And then if you really want to get into it even more, as they were filming it, he was in talks with, because he had the foresight to know that merchandising was going to be big for the movie.
Oh yeah.
So he was going around talking to the different major toy companies that were out there to do a toy line that corresponded with the movie. And almost all of them turned them down. And he went to negotiations with a brand new toy company that was out there that was only doing a few small things, didn't really have any big hits yet, called Kenner. And actually talked to them, and they came to an agreement for the figures, for the toy line. There's a series on Netflix called The Toys That Made Us.
I still haven't watched that. It's in my queue. It's in my list.
It's so good. It is so good. That's how I know this was from that. But they went into negotiations, and there's some really great stories in there how they came.
Because it was the first time that any kind of like merchandising tied in with a movie release.
Correct.
Because before, you're not going to have like Gone to the Wind figures of whatever, the two characters.
Well,
get your playset of Birdie Atlanta.
Because it wasn't thought of as a true market for toys. Because all toys back then were either based off of real life, things that you would do in real life, or they were based off of events that was going on, or TV shows. Yeah. And the reason for it was because the TV shows, just as an example, were constantly in front of these kids. The kids were constantly watching these shows, being reminded of this stuff, and going, ooh, look at this toy that's going with the show.
Yeah.
A movie, you see that once or twice, and that's it. It's out of your mind. You go on and do something else, so it doesn't have that impact. Eventually, it's gone from theaters, and it's just gone. From everything.
And it'll be at that time from movie theater release to home release, because VHS wasn't even back then. It was I don't think there was any.
I'm not really sure,
because I forget when VHS came out.
I think there was VHS.
Or whenever you saw it on TV, because their TV was only a few channels, like 3 or 4
It was definitely less,
Yeah, so you didn't really have a home release market like we do now.
Correct.
So even then, if there was one, it would be years from theater release and out of theater to when you'll see it at home.
Oh, absolutely. So it wasn't in your forethought. It wasn't to thought of spending all this money to mass produce a toy line for something that people aren't constantly engaging with, just wasn't a concept. So no one wanted to invest the time or the money. Kenner, actually saw something in this, thought it was a great idea, and went with it. What they also did, though, without getting too much into it, you'll have to watch the thing. The rights that they did on this was just unbelievable. It was a really funny story how they came to. So as he was making the movie, filming it, developing it, designing it, he was inviting people from Kenner on set
to do like costuming and
to see the props, to see the costumes and stuff like that, because they didn't have anything to go off of.
Yeah. So you can only look at so much from like a photo. You're like,
they didn't even have the photos.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It literally was drawings at best.
Just come on set. Hey, this is Mark Hamill that he's playing with
Skywalker. So they got to
Carrie
go
Fisher.
on set. They got to see all this stuff. Then they could draw it up and get the approvals But the timeline for it was crazy for toys to be able to be produced, and that's when they came up with the what was that pack? Oh, crap! I'm gonna get yelled at by my nerd friends. I know this, but it's not a starter pack, but there was the intro pack with Star Wars, where all you literally bought was a piece of cardboard. And on this piece of cardboard, it was kind of like your proof of purchase, if you will. Oh, really? So when the toys were actually made, you got the first few figures. It was an idea that was came up with on the fly because they were not able to meet the deadlines of when the movie was released.
It was like an IOU. It was like,
basically,
hey kids, you'll be able to get us this, and we'll send you your stuff in a couple months afterwards. Now, this also launched careers of like I said, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford. Plus also Anthony Daniels and blanking on his name. Played Willow. The
guy who was in the R2-D2 suit.
Yeah. And I can see his name right there. I'm sorry.
He was in Harry Potter.
Yeah,
was,
no, he wasn't. No, this was that's not guy who did Willow. He came later. He played Ewok. I forget. I'll think of the name later, but it's basically it almost like kickstarted their careers because after New Hope came out, they went and then started. They saw all the success. I mean, there was like this is a huge blockbuster.
Oh, it exploded.
Yeah,
it exploded more than I think anyone really realized.
Because it was like lines out the door waiting, you know, like how it is now for opening day. Mm-hmm. It was before people dressed up.
Yes,
so you had the regular people out there with their bell bottoms and big glasses and afros out the wazoo.
Funny enough, time really hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't. It's funny how it cycled back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's after New Hope. Then I think Lucas is like, okay, this is a success, and my effects company that I started, let's go ahead and work on a sequel. Got Empire Strikes Back, which is basically it's a direct sequel, but it takes place like I think it was like months or a year or two after A New Hope. Because there's a lot of timeline in between.
There was a timeline in between. And I kind of off subject, but I just thought of something. If I remember correctly, it was actually Scorsese that he is the reason that we have the scroll in the beginning of the film was because of Martin Scorsese.
Oh, okay. And how they filmed that actually is very interesting. It's this huge glass sheet that the camera says pan down, laying on the floor, and it's just slowly pan down. And then there's no magic or anything. It's just, you know, a camera moving across this pane of glass on top of a black Starfield painted board, probably.
And it's interesting that's because I was down here in St. Pete at the Museum of Fine Arts. They had an exhibit of the Star Wars exhibit with all the costumes and stuff like that. And they actually had the first drawing for the panel, the first panel drawing for the scroll of what it looked like, and that they had the same angle and all that stuff. Because I always thought that had to do with just the way it was filmed. You know what I mean? Not realizing that was the intention, was to actually have it look like that,
like a scroll. You know, like, you know, the old Bard scroll. You know,
instead of it just going top to bottom, it kind of fades off into space. Like that was intriguing.
Yeah, it's all sorts of stuff that it was wasn't really thought of, and doing like we talked about the special effects. You got miniatures, and doing like with the trench run at the end of the movie. So I know, spoiler alert. It's been a couple years. If you haven't seen New Hope, well, too bad. We're gonna spoil it for you. The Death Star blows up
again.
No, first time.
I know.
But doing a trench run is probably like a. Almost like a half a football field in length.
It was big, yeah. It was pretty big.
And they had like the camera coming through, and they had like the little fire. They're working with like little. But it's slowed down just enough where it looks like it's basic filming techniques for a movie.
Well, what is now basic filming techniques?
They did a lot of stuff like miniatures and all the other movies and stuff like that. He's just taking it more on a grander scale. But yeah, moving into The Empire Strikes Back. Now we got we're in the 80s.
Yes.
I want to say 80, 81.
Yes.
I should have looked this up or have it.
I want to say 81.
Now, he took all that knowledge and he improved a little bit more on it. He's using more claymation techniques with the walkers on Hoth, because those are miniatures, but it's more of a claymation type where it's stop motion.
Stop motion. Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure it was 81 because I remember just recently finding a picture of me in my 80s style Ewok Halloween costume when I was a kid.
Well, that would be Return of the Jedi.
Was it?
Yeah, Ewoks were in the third one. The fluffy bears at the end. Nub nub.
Nub nub. All right, then that would have been...
That was 80... That was mid to late 80s, I think. I'm pondering.
Yeah.
It was all in the 80s where all of a sudden these films are exploding, like Indiana Jones, Star Wars, you got Close Encounters. It's all sci-fi.
Technically
pretty much
Star Trek.
The motion picture, V'ger. Well, Star Trek was before about We're not gonna mix our stars together.
Yeah, I mean, and let's be real, Star Trek sucks.
You can find him at Joe. So if you see Joe, you hit him with a bath of poodles.
Troubles.
Yeah, troubles. But yeah, okay, you got Empire Strikes Back and then Return of the Jedi. Each film was pretty much at the time, like especially Return of the Jedi, was more darker in tone.
Yes.
And because it was an all-out war between the Empire and the Rebellion. And it was the last-ditch effort of the Rebellion. And then we learned that, Vader is actually Luke's father. Again, spoiler alert, sorry. But it's... With the Return of the Jedi, they had more computer-generated effects. At the end scene with the battle.
They were getting there.
With the whole battle with the Death Star over Endor, and that whole thing was pretty much, it was a mixture of models and CGI assisted technology to get the everything looking right.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't really until the prequels that they really brought in the prequels.
What's that?
The ones that you don't want to admit, but that's because of our generation.
Well, there was a 30 or something year gap between... No, it was a 25 year gap between Return of the Jedi and Phantom Menace. Where George Lucas had this bright idea to... He
always had the idea. His original plan was to do the 3 in the middle, then the prequels, then the 3 at the end.
But unfortunately, at the time, or when he started the prequels, there was no... somebody or people saying, maybe you shouldn't do this or this or this. It was more like, oh, that's a great idea, George. Yeah, let's do that, George.
I don't...
Midi-chlorians as a virus that you pick up.
If I remember correctly, he just was never happy with the storylines.
Well, then also in between the time between Phantom Menace and the original trilogy, they had several home releases. Mm-hmm. You had the original cut versions. And he, like you said, he wasn't pleased at that. So he decided, I'm going to redo it. Mm-hmm. I have all this new technology from LucasArts. And I'm going to,
clean up all the stuff that he wasn't happy with.
Clean up, I want to say...
destroy.
Destroy.
There was something that magical about the way that it was done that really gave it the character.
There were some effects that he did, yes, it improved on like explosions or something. But when you
start changing things,
you start adding in more dinosaurs or the alien creatures in the
who shot first.
Oh, that's we always know Han shot first. Guido never got the fire. No. But the whole head move over, and it's like no, that looked unnatural. And then having it, because in the behind the scenes thing, Jabba was actually played by a regular guy. Mm-hmm. It is a larger guy, but until they added Jabba the Hutt as in the was it Empire? No,
Jedi Strikes Back.
Yeah, I think it was Jedi, where you actually see Jabba the Hutt. Mm-hmm. But at the time when he redid his whole Master Collection, it had Han Solo very jarringly step over the tail of Jabba the Hutt, but actually Harrison Ford had walked behind the other character. So all he did is basically took bad Photoshop and up and over. It just looked really awful.
And if I remember correctly, the Ewoks were actually supposed to be like miniature Wookiees.
Okay.
They were originally supposed to be.
They turned into like mini Wookiees.
And that's why they look that way. I mean, they're a completely different race, but originally they were supposed to be like kid Wookiees in a sense, like they just hadn't grown up yet.
Right.
And then I can't remember why they decided to change it or something like that, but they obviously did. But as much as we don't like the prequels, that's a generational thing.
Yeah, that's a generational. Because I must admit, I went to go see Phantom Menace, I think 3 or 4 times. because it's a new Star Wars movie.
Yeah, it was Star Wars. Yeah.
And I didn't care if it was like completely boring with the Trade Federation, but it had.
You said not happy?
We said, "Oh, laugh at that to you." Oh. Jar Jar.
Yeah.
Darth Jar Jar.
I still like the idea that he's a Force sensitive or.
Well, that's the thing. He's a major
whatever.
departure of what the Force was in the original trilogy is now just an explained away thing. Oh, it's just the stuff that's in your body that you have that was passed down to you. The midi-chlorians or whatever you have this high level midi-chlorians. Oh, well, no, it's not. You're not going around testing around. Oh, you had chicken pox. Congratulations! Now you can wield a lightsaber and pilot your pod racer.
I get what they were going for. I don't want to say that it wasn't horrible.
I have to cough at that because it just totally blew away the mysticism of what the Force was. Because he was going for Lucas was like a samurai in space. It's like this: you get in touch with the overall universe that is in touch with you, or you're not this special person,
But
not
that's
this
just
thing
it,
infected with. Oh, you got special DNA.
But it was to me the middle three, the first three, however you want to phrase it. We'll say
OT.
We'll say that the first three. There was something mystical about it. Like there was something that some people had, some people didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like there were. It was just there was something special about them. And then in the prequels, they try explaining that this because of this. Yes, you are special. There is something there.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. I think it could have been done better. That's all. You know what I mean? Like to me, midichlorians, fine if you wanted to go with that, but just go about it a slightly better way than
like I kept saying, it's just like slaps away, like because it takes place prior, because it's the again spoilers, sorry, is the story of Anakin Skywalker / Vader.
Yes, it's the rise of Vader. In a sense.
And the Sith Empire, and
which even then there's a lot of to me that's what it feels like they tried to the best way to put it is it feels like they rushed something out. Like they had a great thing with the three. It feels like they threw together a story because everything was super popular and spit the quote unquote prequels out, and it felt very rushed. The problem is it wasn't rushed. There was a huge period of time, so there's no reason it should have been like this.
No, it wasn't. And it came out like 2 or 3 years between each film in our time.
Yeah,
but in the Star Wars universe, is little Annie was probably 10, 12 years old when it first found him on Tatooine. To the second one, and he's some brooding late teens, early 20s with what's his name, Christian Anderson, or no, forget the actor's name. But anyways, yeah, I'm bad with the names.
Just an off day. It's okay.
Yeah, but from going where all the munitions of like the Empire rising up behind the scenes, you have all this behind the scenes stuff with the Sith, and then,
which is why they were doing all of the Trade Federation,
and
all
the
that.
First one, yeah,
they were showing them, how they gain power. Like it is a prequel. It is the beginning. It's them setting up for the three.
Because at the time, the Jedi were so numerous. Mm-hmm. They're like the peacekeeper. Like they were basically the UN of the galaxy.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean they're running around with their blue helmets on, keeping the peace in different planets.
Well, and that's why the younger generation that grew up with the prequels actually like them, because they get the prequels, so they get the setup. It's just like the first movie in any series. It's that initial explaining everything in the world. So when you go deeper into it, you just know why that is. Well, they get the first three, then they go to the true original three, and all of a sudden the quality of everything
just drops. Well, that's again with Lucas, just overly doing it with the CGI.
Well, and even without the CGI, the quality still drops compared to the prequels.
Yeah, well,
just because of the time they were made.
Exactly.
But you got to look at it from that generation's perspective. They have these first three with this quality, that all of a sudden they go to movies made in the 70s with that quality, and it's just.
Then we're back up again too.
Yeah, it's not as good, and then all of a sudden we have the movies coming out now, which are awesome.
Yeah.
I do feel that they are kind of rehashes of the original three.
Well, I want to say we'll move right into the new The Last Jedi. We're not going to spoil, since I want to say like 3 years.
We're not at the 20-year mark.
Yeah, and The Last Jedi. I want to say yes. The Force Awakens was it's similar in tone to A New Hope. It was more of trying to get this generation into the storyline of it's like a catch up. Like, okay, this is what's going on. These are who these people are. This is bad stuff that happened. These are the new bad guys. And
well, I mean, to me, that's what summarizes the new trilogy that's being developed and coming out now. It is ending the storylines of the characters we've been following, while at the same time showing that almost like we said, history repeats itself. You know what I mean? When there's now new characters,
because
there's a new storyline.
It's always an empire. There's always a resistance.
Yes,
and they're constantly battling each other, and you got planets in the way or tipping back and forth between the two. Mm-hmm. You have neutral. You got smugglers. I mean, you got a whole bounty hunters. You got this whole galaxy of things that are out there. And with The Last Jedi, I think a lot of people came across as saying, "Oh, this is." Yes, there was some flaws in the movie. Yes, I will accept that. But the overall tone of the movie was the move away from the Skywalker story and turning into, let's go ahead and move Skywalkers out of the way and going into the Rey, Finn, and Poe and BB-8 and then the new generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's kind of the point.
That there's no longer going to be Jedis and Sith. As I see Rey, okay, I'm trying not to go into spoilers, as not like a gray Jedi, where she won't be having a training of going to a Jedi temple and getting all like training of that, and Kylo Ren, he's not going to like Mustafar or what should have been as Korriban and getting trained in the Sith ways or something like that, where you're a Sith, you deal in absolutes. You're a Jedi, you have no emotions. It's kind of blending the two philosophies together in certain ways.
I don't want to say anything because I'll get into spoilers.
I know. That's why I was trying to keep it as spoiler free as possible. Because it's recently just came out last year, so I don't want to say what happens.
Yeah.
But moving on from that, you have also these anthology series. Like you have Rogue One, which is a very good movie that took place what happened prior to A New Hope, and the events that led up to the opening scene of A New Hope.
Yeah, gap fillers.
Yeah. And then a new one that's coming out, the Han Solo story.
Solo.
The Star Wars story. Now, the trailer looks pretty good. I don't know how it's going to play out, but I think a reason why they're doing these anthologies is because these are recognizable characters.
Yeah,
except for Rogue One.
They're moneymakers.
Yeah.
Basically. Well, and even Rogue One is still a moneymaker because there was still always the question of
how did they get the Death Star plans?
Yeah, because it just wouldn't have worked without it. Mm-hmm. And it leads to some interesting things that happen and some interesting points. There is
actually a little Easter egg in Rogue One of what happened in The Last Jedi.
I have to rewatch those. I saw them one. I have to kind of rewatch. But there was an interesting fan theory that's out there that I would love to see them I guess they don't necessarily have to, but even if they were to come out and just validate that this is true. But there was an interesting theory because, there's always that joke about stormtroopers, how they can't hit the broadside of a barn standing right next to it.
Or they run into the door.
Yeah, well. But there was an interesting fan theory that's out there that stormtroopers, as they are actually highly, highly trained soldiers. That they are extremely dangerous, very accurate. Like, they are very skilled in what they do. The reason why, from our viewpoint, they look like they couldn't hit anything if they tried is because of the Force. That the Force protects the people that have things that need to be accomplished. Using we were just talking about, I forgot the name all of a sudden, where they get the plans for the Death Star. Using that as an example, you have the one gentleman, and I'm going to try to say this without giving away any spoilers. You have the one gentleman who's blind that needs to hit a switch in the middle of a gunfight that does not get hit. Had he not gotten to that switch, plans wouldn't have gone out. Nothing would have happened. The first 3 movies would not have happened the way that they did. The Force protected him long enough to do what he was meant to do for the rest of everything to go on. So the rest
of the storyline can continue.
It's the same thing with all the other movies. The reason why Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, the reason why they can fly in and they're able to do all of these things is because they are protected by this overwhelming nature of the Force, and because they have other things that they have to do.
Well, yeah, I'll go with that theory, is that because the stormtroopers are like this trained. In The Force Awakens, there was a time, and when they're looking at Finn's file, it shows a little baby. So these troops are basically trained from birth, I want to say, as stormtroopers. It's cannon fodder because there's so many of them, but they're the front line.
They're still very highly skilled soldiers.
Because then also in Rogue One, you have the the ones in black. Those are probably like SEAL Team 6 type.
Yeah, you got your pilots, which are in the black. You've got
these are the stormtroopers, but they're all in black. The black coloring.
Oh, okay.
But they hold the long rifles and.
But really, the higher end ones are the guards for the Emperor, the ones in red.
Yeah,
those are extremely skilled.
The Last Jedi.
Yeah. No spoilers.
No spoilers. Stop.
But we'll go with the original 3. Those guards, they are highly, highly skilled.
You would think that they were trained up to a certain point, because I want to also go into the cartoon, like the Clone Wars cartoon series that was on Disney. Because what I have to say is when Disney acquired LucasArts and films and all that back in early 2010, I want to say, I forget when. They were, even before that, the Clone Wars was trying to go into more what happened between the time of Anakin Skywalker's rise up as a Jedi to his fall, before his fall. So during the whole war, the Clone Wars and all that, basically the title of the show, all sorts of stuff that was coming out is that the troopers were all clones that we saw in the movie with the Attack of the Clones.
Yes.
How things moved around and how the whole universe was basically. I don't think they dropped the midichlorians act at the time, just to it's more of like a. But they are going on how the Force actually is a actual living, breathing, intergalactic thing, because in one episode they actually visited a planet that existed out of time, but it was like the good and the bad side of the Force is constantly it's personified basically between each other, and one of the characters gets corrupted by the bad side, and she will have to learn how to move past that period in time of her life. It's actually, you think a kids show, yeah, whatever. It's actually pretty interesting.
Okay.
The continuation of stuff like that.
Another one that I like is the Freemakers Adventures. It's the Lego one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually really good. Of course, being a Lego fanatic,
Oh,
I
yeah.
had to. But I didn't really know much about it, to be perfectly honest with you, until we went to the last Star Wars celebration in Orlando. And one of the panels that actually, if I remember correctly, it was Cliff, who was on one of the other episodes. It was because of him that we went to the panel. They were showing previews for it, and it was for the new season, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Because they're on their second. And that's what introduced me to it, and I went back and it's actually really entertaining, like really, really entertaining. But the timeline for it is, if I remember correctly, it's before the first 3, but you don't find that out till later in the series. Like, it's how it's done is actually really cool. I would love if they did a little quip like throw in this last movie.
Now, I don't know if you've because during this time between the OT and the prequels, there was a whole bunch of books and everything and comics written. I don't know if you had read the Timothy Zahn trilogy of books.
I have not read any of the books, but technically they're not canon.
Not anymore.
They're what's the?
They're legends.
Yes.
Because that was part of the Disney acquisition of LucasArts.
Yes.
And film, is that all the stuff that was written prior are no longer, like you said, canon.
Yes.
But in the show Star Wars Rebels, another cartoon, another character, a fan favorite, is Admiral Thrawn, the blue Chiss. It's the alien species Chiss.
Okay.
He's got the red eyes and everything. He was brought back in, which these cartoons are canon. So,
correct.
And it's be interesting how things played out with the Star Wars Rebels, because that was all period that happened prior to Rogue One, up to Rogue One time period.
Okay.
Basically it's the building of the Resistance.
Yeah, the way that I look at it is I kind of get Disney's move with removing that stuff from canon.
Oh, there was a lot of
heat,
because there was a lot of what was it? The Solo family had been Solo. He was like a anyway. There was a lot of bad, but some good.
But I get the move because, one, it allowed Disney the freedom to do what they want to do with the storyline. But two, it gave them a ton of source material to pull off of.
And they can pull in stuff. Okay.
Well, that's just it.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, they could take any of the things from the books that are quote unquote not canon, but stories, literal, just legends, hearsay, whatever, and then actually make part of it canon, or make a person from those canon, and basically, that was yes, I was at that battle, but what you hear about it is highly exaggerated. You know what I mean? Something along those lines. Like, it allows you to really pull in a lot more source material without being stuck to
what these other authors and other people had thought of a Star Wars universe should be in their own.
Totally get it.
Yeah. Now, with the ever increasing Disney influence, now they have included building theme parks or sections in their theme parks.
Can't wait.
Yeah, that's going to be 2020 as Star Wars open in Disneyland, and 6 months later in Disney World.
Yes,
but it's basically even before that they had the Star Tours. It's just a single ride. And it was actually really, really fun. It still is. And they included some of the scenes from the latest movies into the ride itself.
Yeah.
So now you have these lands. It's totally immersed into it. I mean, we covered it before on
when we were talking
about
theme parks. To me, this makes sense. There's such a fandom behind it. There's such just like with Harry Potter, there is such a following.
Yeah.
That I don't see it going away tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be around long enough that it makes sense for a theme park.
Yeah. I mean, I want to say how Disney acquired it was a good thing. because they, with like Pixar and the Disney movies, they know how to do a good story.
Yes.
And they do story very well.
They do.
And I want to say, yes, now they have the money to do any kind of, like, if they want to do, like, experiment on technology for, like, special effects or anything like that, they have billions of dollars to throw away.
And that was kind of my outlook on it when they bought it, is, to me, them buying it means that we will have Star Wars for generations to come. You know, my daughter, who's 1, will have Star Wars for her daughter or son or, you know, whatever child that if she decides to have any kids.
And now the thing is that with the upcoming The Last Jedi was the second in the trilogy, in the new trilogy, episode 9 excuse me, episode 9 is going to be the end of, like I said, the Skywalker and Han Solo,
yes,
per se, into
at least
new,
that's the thought now.
Yeah,
whether they decide to do it, but yeah.
The thought is that Rian Johnson, who did The Last Jedi, he has been set up to do a new trilogy that within the Star Wars universe, because there is so much story, so much to pick from.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole thing that we were just saying, is that they have source material for ages.
Because a lot of things was like, oh, he's going to do like the Old Republic, because there's a video game called Star Wars: The Old Republic, and but that kind of rumor has been squashed. Like, no, because that game actually exists outside of canon. They don't. It's part of Disney, but it's not canon. Whatever happens into it, whatever goes on in the game.
Again, the highly exaggerated, campfire stories.
Yeah.
But it's not
the story changes each time it's told.
Yeah, exactly. But anytime you hear someone say no, they're not doing this, yes, there is a good chance that they are telling the truth. But there's always that glimmer of, you can't really trust Hollywood when it comes to that.
Yeah. And now, this future is pretty much, it's going to be a Star Wars movie for every year for, the next decade.
Honestly, I don't even, is it set up like that?
Well, it's not like the Marvel universe where one or two every year. But the thinking is, okay, you got Solo this year. Next year, you have Episode 9. The year after is probably, they're thinking either a Kenobi or a Boba Fett anthology series. So that's already, 3 years?
Yeah.
Then the Rian Johnson trilogy will be starting to have plenty of time to do pre-production and start production work, and then filming. The release on the 4th or 5th year. So
as long as they can actually develop a good script, I'm okay.
I think the team that is now, I have confidence in that they'll be doing a good script. I mean, it's Disney. They don't want the public backlash, saying, "Oh, you went back to the prequel." Phantom Menace.
I don't know. To a degree, I think they're going to have that backlash regardless, because every generation's going to think their version is the best version.
Yeah, with The Last Jedi, the criticism was like, "Oh, well, blah blah blah. It's a horrible movie," and it's like, no, because you wanted Empire Strikes Back, but you didn't want Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
So they couldn't win either way that you
can't. You can't recapture the magic for someone who's already seen how the trick is done.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. You can only capture the magic for someone who's never seen the trick.
So I know we went a little long. I mean, you can't go short on Star Wars. This discussion is ongoing.
There's still so much more that we could talk about.
So if you want to let us know how Joe is completely wrong on a lot of things,
prove me wrong.
That old meme with the guy. But if you have any kind of insights or anything, let us know. Video stories or games or anything that you can come up with, saying, no, well, Ben Solo was actually this. He was the knight and god of the Force. No. Let us know. We got our Facebook group going, and we got our Twitters.
Yes.
So always let us know. And let other people know about the show. Pass it along. Pass the episodes along. Give them a link. It's quite easy.
How are you introducing your little ones to Star Wars? Are you starting with the prequels? Are you starting with the originals?
With my little one, I jumped in at watch New Hope and jumped in right to The Force Awakens.
Not that she has any knowledge or will remember or anything, but I've started with the Freemaker Adventures.
But let us know everything that you can come up with, even if you have like your own theories of what could be happening or what happened, like your own. This is what happened, ties this and this together. So let us know, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Geek 2.0 podcast. Ooh, and it's going to be extra good.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Geek 2.0 podcast. Be sure to check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Geek 2.0 podcast. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Geek20 podcast. Don't forget to visit our website at geek20podcast.com for older episodes, news, and much more. And make sure to subscribe to our podcast through your favorite podcatcher player of choice. The Geek 2.0 podcast is part of the Collective Network.